Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, folks. It's been a busy week in the news. Let's dive right in. We have an announcement from the Biden administration. It's an update for the folks in East Palestine, Ohio. So any of my Ohio people out there, I am glad to see you. I'm glad you're okay. Let's keep it that way. The administration has mobilized a robust multi-agency effort to support the people of East Palestine, Ohio. Within hours of the Norfolk Southern train derailment, the Environmental Protection Agency deployed a team to East Palestine to support state and local emergency and environmental response efforts. The Department of Transportation also arrived on scene to investigate what led to the derailment. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, has been closely coordinating with the Emergency Operations Center, Ohio Emergency Management Agency, and federal partners. As President Biden told Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, that's not part of the announcement, Mike DeWine and Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, soon after the derailment, the federal government stands ready to provide any additional federal assistance the states may need. Today, in response to Governor Mike DeWine's and the Ohio Congressional Delegation's request of February 16th for additional federal public health support, the Department of Health and Human Services and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention announced they are deploying a team of medical personnel and toxicologists to conduct public health testing and assessments. The team will support federal, state, and local officials already on the ground to evaluate individuals who are exposed or potentially exposed to chemicals and help ensure timely communications with the public. They've also given us several resources. The EPA is sharing regular updates, resources for residents, and test results at, here's the website, folks, jot it down, response.epa.gov/East Palestine train derailment. The EPA has dedicated a phone line staffed by community coordinators to answer any questions for residents. That telephone number is area code 215-814-2400. East Palestine residents can request air or water monitoring at 330-849-3919. Residents can follow updates on Twitter at EPA and at EPA Great Lakes. That's the announcement, folks. My thoughts on it are Governor Mike DeWine came out and said, yeah, the president called me. He offered help. I never called him back. Then you had Republicans go out and basically spread bullshit all over the place, saying, and Fox News jumped right in this, because if you're not following the inside baseball on this, Fox is hedging their bets. They see in the future Trump and DeSantis tearing each other apart. Mike DeWine emerges as a candidate. So when this happened, and as poorly as Mike DeWine in Ohio handled this situation, Fox panicked and started pumping out a bunch of bullshit, basically saying that the federal government was turning down requests and yada, yada, yada. That was a load of crap. That was completely fictional. Fox is not news. Fox is a political operation. That's what they do, and they are not bound by the truth. Every time they get sued, they go to court and say, nobody would realistically believe that we're news. So take it for what you will, folks. Moving on. I would, and I didn't plan anything for this. This is something that I just saw, and just come along with me, folks. I want to talk about John Fetterman for a little bit. I said that John Fetterman has balls like church bells, and I meant it. That guy lost one of his primary senses. He lost his ability to even hear his own voice. We're not talking about hearing loss, just, like a little bit of hearing loss. We're not talking like what I have, which is profound hearing loss. I'm damn near deaf. He cannot hear. And it is not something that gradually happened. It's not something that happened over time, like with me. I lost my hearing due to shooting, folks. I did. I too much shooting. The hearing protection I was told would work by these companies didn't work. It is what it is. And I have to tell you, dealing with not having a functioning sense, even for somebody like me who can wear hearing aids and get assisted, it's difficult. It is extremely difficult. To have it abruptly happen, for, not just what happened to John Fetterman, but, if people in accidents lose their sight, people in combat lose their hearing. It just happens. That causes depression. Your body no longer functions as it once did. And when I saw him, John Fetterman, stand next to, think about this, folks. He went on to debate. That's the kind of strength this guy had. He had just lost his hearing. He is going to go debate a television personality, someone who is incredibly accustomed to being under the lights, somebody that is a speaker by trade. And he did it. He did it anyways. That took balls. It really did. So I know the man has strength. But depression has nothing to do with strength or weakness. If you have never dealt with depression, you can't understand it. It's not the sads. It's not feeling blue. That's not what it is. Depression is pain, people. It is pain. It is deep emotional pain. And like any creature, like any animal, when you feel pain, you want to make it stop. That's why so many people that suffer from depression, this is not related to John Fetterman, this is just depression in general. Like so many people that suffer from depression, they will medicate. They will become addicted. They will become alcoholics. They will become addicted to drugs. They will become addicted to things to try to make that pain stop. And it just complicates things. It does. But I don't want to get off on the weeds in this because that's not what we're talking about with John Fetterman. John Fetterman had the strength to admit he was having a problem. So many men die at their own hands suffering from depression because we will not do that. We will not admit that we're having a problem. And he did. And that took strength, folks. And he's getting treatment. And so that you understand, because there's been so much bullshit coming out of the right from this. I mean, they're screaming for him to resign, which is just stupid, because if you know what depression is, it's just a chemical imbalance in the brain that causes it. People that are put on like high blood pressure medication suffer depression. It's very common, because you've altered your body chemistry, your brain reacts to it poorly. So they need to give you some medication to straighten out your brain chemistry, put you back on the right track. That's just what this is. He's in Walter Reed. He's getting fantastic care. They're going to analyze. They're going to try different medications with him to see how he feels. He may be there as long as a month. I mean, it takes a while to get the right chemistry in the right place, and he will be back on the job. As is, he's working from his hospital bed, folks. This guy has strength, and I'm proud of him. I'm very proud of him. He's dealt with his physical disability like a champ, like a pro, like a boss. He really has. And this too shall pass. He's getting the help he needs, and this too shall pass. But that's all I've got to say on that, folks. Moving on. You may or may not be aware that Representative Angie Craig was attacked. She was in her apartment building. She had gone down to the lobby where they have coffee. They sell coffee. She got some coffee. There was a guy pacing around down there. When she got back on the elevator, the guy shoved his arm in the door and got on the elevator with her and told her, I got to go to the bathroom. I'm going to your apartment with you. And she said, no, you're not. And he attacked her right there in the elevator. He punched her in the face. She fought back. She doused him with her brand new cup of hot coffee, fought the guy off, and he took off. He was later arrested. The guy's name is Kendrick Hamlin. Again, very proud that she stood up and showed the strength that she did. And that really should have been the end of the story in her personal private business. But it wasn't. We have Fox News. It's not news. It's Fox political operation. They ran stories and mentioned Angie Craig, and now she's receiving threats and vulgar messages about her attack. Right-wingers, Republicans, those Fox-watching pieces of crap are sending her messages like they were glad she got attacked. They hope she gets attacked again. You know, some of them are getting extremely vulgar, hoping she gets essayed. And, you know, folks, we just really have to come to grips with a vast majority of Republicans out there are repugnant, some subhuman people. They are. They're just not what you and I would consider human. We have another issue coming out of California from Stanford. The president of Stanford, Dr. Tessier Levine, is in some serious hot water, folks. You've probably heard the name Genentech before. It is a huge bioresearch and pharmaceutical company. Dr. Tessier Levine worked for Genentech before taking over his current job, and he did a study on Alzheimer's. And if this shakes out to be what Genentech says it is, Dr. Tessier Levine will burn in hell for this. He will. This was just horrible. He faked an Alzheimer's, the result. He's accused of faking the results of an Alzheimer's study that he conducted. It was what made his bones, is what made him famous. When a drug company commissions a study, has one of their scientists conduct a study, when they go to formulate drugs off the results of that study, one of the first things they do is they replicate the study. They replicate the experiments just to get a baseline, just to confirm, that there aren't different baselines of data. They replicate it. No one at Genentech could replicate Dr. Tessier Levine's results. So they kicked it over to be they've got a division there that's basically a fraud division. They look at studies that they cannot replicate and say, okay, was this something that just went wrong? Are we doing it wrong? Or is this dirty? And they are coming back and saying he falsified results. We'd all gotten excited, especially if you've got family members that have Alzheimer's, we'd all gotten very excited about the potential for a cure, because that's what his study pointed to, was a potential cure for Alzheimer's. And it turns out it was most likely is going to end up being all smoke and mirrors, on which he built his career off of, and he needs to resign as president of Stanford. That's just too much, folks. We have some other great announcements. It's been a week of good news, really fantastic news. Boeing just got a new contract from Air India. They're going to buy 200 planes from Boeing. It is a $34 billion contract that's going to support upwards of 1 million jobs at Boeing. Keep them operating, keep them going. You know, they've had troubles over the last few years with recalls and whatnot. And this was really a terrific shot in the arm, a terrific injection of revenue and stability that company desperately needed. Ford has announced that they're going to build a $3.5 billion factory in Marshall, Michigan. Congratulations to my Michigan folks. Those will be some fantastic jobs. They will be some fantastic manufacturing jobs. They're looking at a permanent workforce of 2,500 people. So yay, good high-paying manufacturing jobs. Way to go, Joe. And Texas Instruments has announced that they are going to build an $11 billion semiconductor plant in Utah. Folks, that's the CHIP Act at work. That is the CHIP Act at work. It is 100% a way to go, Joe. And we're not just seeing it in Utah. Arizona is booming. Just booming. The world's largest semiconductor manufacturer, TSMC, has had back in 2019, I want to say, had started construction on one. They call a semiconductor factory a fab. One fab. After the CHIP Act, they've expanded that to 6 fabs. They've also worked with Intel, and the second largest chip manufacturer in the world, who is also expanding into Arizona. Again, terrific jobs, long-term jobs. Continental America is becoming the hub for semiconductor production. And if you remember what happened during COVID, I can give you a personal story about that. Is we were buying a car right before COVID hit, and right as COVID hit. And we have a dealership that we like to do business with. We have a sales manager that we've developed a relationship with. It cuts through all the bullshit. He knows we don't pay sticker price, and he works us up a deal when we walk in. He knows I buy warranties, folks. A lot of people say don't buy warranties. I buy warranties. If something ever happens to me, you know, my wife has a good solid warranty and a relationship with the dealership where she can be taken care of, and that's what I want. So yeah, I buy warranties. Don't slide into my DMs telling me how I'm wasting my money and shit like that. I am not. I'm buying peace of mind, and I have it. Thank you. So we have, like I said, a relationship with this dealer, and he came back and said, look, I'm not being a jerk, but forgive me. Still fighting that damn cold. Forgive me. He said, look, I can't give you the normal deal I give you, which is usually a pretty good deal. He said, I'll work with you on the warranty. I'll work with you on a lot of other things, but I can't come off the price very much. I can't. I think he cut like 10% off the sticker price, which I was happy about. He said, I can't give you a really spectacular deal because, you know, Honda's given us a warning. We have no cars coming in. we were not getting our new car deliveries. And I thought, there's a little bit of hyperbole there. You know, I mean, what car company doesn't deliver cars, right? Well, we took the car back to have some of the things that little add-ons that we had put on. You know, we were waiting for floor mats to come in and things like that. And we came back a couple weeks later, and this parking lot that had been full of cars, and we're talking about a sizable parking lot. This dealership moves a lot of cars. This entire parking lot was empty. I mean, it was empty. There were no cars in that lot. I'm like, what happened? You know, he's like, COVID. I can get no new Hondas. And, you know, if you folks know, the used car market exploded because car dealerships have to sell cars, right? I mean, they've got to have cars for people. We were getting phone calls on our new car saying, hey, do you want us to sell us that car back? We'll pay you more than you paid for it. No, thank you. I need the car. I appreciate it, but thank you. It was crazy. So Joe Biden, being a leader, negotiated out with Congress the CHIP Act. And the CHIP Act is boosting semiconductor production because that's what the holdup was with everybody's cars. It wasn't just Honda. We were buying a Honda at the time. My wife loves Hondas. Nobody could get new cars because nobody could get chips. You couldn't buy computers. The price of laptops and desktops and everything just skyrocketed because there were no semiconductors. Well, Joe Biden jumped on the job. They passed the CHIP Act. Commerce Department worked on helping Taiwan get things rolling again because Taiwan is the primary the country where semiconductors are manufactured right now. But we are moving into that position. We want to have stability. We want to assure the world, as the world's leader, that we can provide stability. And that's what we're doing, folks. Joe Biden is a leader. Way to go, Joe. I want to talk to you now about Jesse Benton. If you haven't been following the news, this is terrific, folks. This is fantastic. This is great news. I mean, it's not great that it happened, but it is fantastic news. If you don't know who Jesse Benton is, he's a political strategist from here in Texas. He was an aide to Ron Paul back in 2012. He got convicted of campaign finance violations. He got convicted, and Trump pardoned him when Trump got into office at the behest of Rand Paul. But that didn't last long because he was funneling money from a Russian named Roman Vielich, I believe his name was. Paid him $100,000. Get this. This is the beautiful part, folks. This is just so on brand for Republicans. This is just the beautiful part about this, okay? He takes $100,000 from this Russian and funnels it because foreigners can't make direct contributions. They can't make any contributions. Actually, it's illegal for foreigners to make contributions to political campaigns. You can't do it. You can't give money to a politician if you aren't born in the United States. If you're not an American citizen, you cannot donate to political campaigns. It is to prevent undue foreign influence. So Benton takes $100,000, pockets $75,000 of $100,000, screws Trump over, and donates the other $25,000 into the Trump campaign and a couple different organizations that are tied into the Trump campaign. He split up $25,000 three ways and donated it all to Trump in his name, therefore violating campaign finance laws. Because you can't make straw donations for foreigners. You can't do that. That's a crime. And he has been convicted and sentenced to 18 months, and there is nobody to issue him a pardon. Here's to you. By the way, I hope your coffee's as good as mine, man. I tell you what, Mrs. Texas Paul broke out the good stuff this morning. I don't know what we're celebrating, but this is like $5 a cup, man. I'm exaggerating there, but it is good. It is good. If you never had Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee, you need to get you some. Moving on, we have a serious problem with Republicans and their relationship with the truth. You know, we've all followed George Anthony DeVolder Santos and his lies. Just call them lies. He lied to the people of New York, misrepresented what he was wholeheartedly, completely. And it's fraud, folks. It's just fraud. There is embellishment, and then there is fraud, and he's just committing fraud. And it seems like it is just what Republicans do these days. Because what I would like to talk about is Miss Anna Paulina Luna, the newly Republican representative of the 13th District of Florida. There's a lot of people out there making a big deal about this. This is nothing, folks. I want to bat down some stuff that is happening out there that is nothing, that you don't need to be concerned about. Do not care that she was an Instagram model. The other thing that everybody's arguing about on this, and again, I just want to get this out of the way. She said she was a waitress at a strip club. Other people say she was a dancer at a strip club. I don't care, and neither should you. That is the kind of thing that you would expect in a campaign. I wasn't really a stripper. I was a waitress, you know. Okay, whatever. The GPA goes up a couple points, you know, things like that. That happens in a campaign. I don't care about that. Neither should you. But when somebody fundamentally changes who they are, that's a problem. That is misrepresentation, and that is fraud. Anna Paulina Luna has had, it's difficult to tie down exactly who she is, because apparently, thanks to some great journalism from the folks over at the Washington Post, Jacqueline Alemany and Alice Kreitz, who went back and talked to folks. And I mean, they really did a good job. They even went back to Whitman Air Force Base, where Anna Paulina Meyerhofer was an airman at the time. And if you don't know, Meyerhofer is Anna Paulina Luna's given name. Do I care that she changed her name? No. That's legal. What's wrong with that? I don't care that she changed her name from Meyerhofer to Luna. I do not. I do care that she seems to, her entire life, represent herself differently, whatever the situation is that seems to suit her best. When she was at Whitman Air Force Base, apparently this started, they went back and talked to people that served with her. And even as far back as then, you're talking about 10, 12 years ago, she was claiming to be either Jewish or Middle Eastern or Eastern European. She's none of those things. She's none of those things, folks. She claims to be a Messianic Jew. And if you don't know what someone who follows the Messianic faith is. It is a Jewish person that believes in Jesus Christ, that worships Jesus Christ. Not exactly sure how that works, because the whole thing about being Jewish is like you follow the Old Testament, not the New Testament. But this is just my ignorance of the Messianic faith, and I'm not saying anything about it. It's out there. There are people out there. There's an organization called Jews for Jesus. This is a real religious organization. And she also claims to be, she's Ashkenazi Jewish. That is turning out to be false also. It's just not true. It's just not true. Her family has come forward. Her cousin Nicole, her uncle Edward, is her aunt Jolanta. Everybody's coming out and saying no, she's Catholic. Her father was Catholic. Her grandfather was Catholic. She was raised Catholic. That she's Catholic. Her mother disputes, says everything Anna Paulina Luna ever said was the gospel truth. But the rest of her family says, no, that is not true. What's important about that and why it is such, that's bad, folks. That's bad. When you run for office, you tell people what you are. You give them an idea of who you are, and to just claim a whole nother religion it's a problem, folks. And one of the big reasons it's such a big problem, is she ran in a district that is one of the highest concentrations of Jewish folks in the country. Pinellas County, Florida. Talking about Clearwater, St. Petersburg, that area there are a lot of Jewish folks there. So she pretended to be Jewish. And that's just not right, folks. It is just not right to run for office and claim that, that's like me suddenly becoming Southern Baptist because I want to run, this whole area is, we've got the radars and all and Southern Baptist. This is a really, really out there religious area where I live, and me just suddenly picking up a religion and saying, that's what I've been my whole life. That's just not right. Tell people who you are. And there's unfortunately is more to this story. She claimed that her and her mother got no family support, that they were on their own, and she had an impoverished childhood, and that family says, no, not true. They provided pictures to the Washington Post where they showed, Anna Meyerhofer with her family, her father. Her father was a drug addict. That part was true. He was a drug addict. Him and his her mother and father divorced, but there are pictures of him with the family. She wasn't abandoned. Her mother wasn't on her own. She wasn't broke. She even went so far as to say, Anna Meyerhofer went so far as to say that she was the sole source of support for her mother. Her mother remarried. She worked as an elementary school teacher. It's on her resume. When she remarried, she became part of a group called the Moms Club. She actually became the president of the Moms Club, and the Moms Club is actually a club for stay-at-home moms. So yeah, that's married and stay-at-home mom is not exactly broke, destitute, and on the street. And again, this is per her own family saying this. Now, her mom, again, I'll tell you, her mom says everything that Anna Paulina Luna said is gospel truth. But the rest of her family says not so much. And the people that she served with at Whitman Air Force Base also say not so much. Anna Paulina Luna, before running for office, went to, I despise this groomer organization, Turning Point USA. She got a job there. And let's back up 1 second. While she was in the Air Force, she got married, and she took on the name Gamberski for a while. Her husband is Andrew Gamberski. No drama there, no nothing. It's what you'd expect to happen. Her when she was serving in the Air Force, and this goes back to the Turning Point USA stuff, because this fiction that she created for herself, when she went from being, according to all the people that served with her at Whiteman Air Force Base, she was an Obama supporting liberal, quite open about it. She fabricated some stuff that went, according to her roommate that she lived with, when she went to Turning Point USA, she came up with this narrative, this pro-gun narrative. She claims that she was the victim of a home invasion, that someone broke in her home at 4:00 at night, and that if her boyfriend, I believe his name was Jeremy, hadn't been there, that she wouldn't be with us today, and that she didn't have a gun at the time, and that educated her that guns are necessary. Well, her roommate says none of that happened. There was no home invasion. First she's ever heard of it. They did have a break-in when they weren't home. And they did report it to the police, and the police supports the roommate's version of the story that they weren't home during the break-in. And the roommate says they had guns, that her dad, Brittany Brooks's father, her roommate, Brittany Brooks, her father provided both Brittany and Anna Paulina Luna with guns to protect themselves because he was worried about them living in an apartment. And like I said, they had a break-in. So, he wanted them armed. So she had guns. And to clarify there, I confused that a little bit. He gave them guns before the break-in, according to the roommate. This leads somewhere. So Anna Paulina Meyerhofer becomes Anna Paulina Gamberski when she gets married. That's normal. Well, when she goes to work for Turning Point USA, the child grooming organization I despise so much, you need to check to see if they're on at your kids' high school or at your kids' colleges, because they groom children with the same bullshit that you get out of Fox News and everywhere else. The Fox Political Organization. They are a horrible organization, in my opinion, and you need to check and make sure your kids are safe from them. She went to work as their Hispanic outreach. Now, remember, she's been telling people at Whiteman Air Force Base that she's Middle Eastern or Eastern European or everything else but. Then she gets to Turning Point USA, and then she embraces her mother's heritage. Great. That's her heritage. Fine. Again, don't have a problem with that at all. She changes her name from her married name, Gamberski, to Luna, her mother's maiden name, because she becomes the head of Hispanic outreach at Turning Point USA. It helps to be Hispanic. But she also creates that narrative that she was a poor kid, and that formed her views of the world, that, she had no family support, that her and her mom were broke, and that her dad abandoned her. And this, well, it turns out, according to family, none of that is true. None of that is true. And that's the problem, folks. When you start becoming a political salamander and just forming yourself into whatever fits, that's fraud when you run for election. When you carry that narrative over and present that to voters as who you are, that's fraud, folks. It really is fraud. And there's a reason that she did it, because she had a problem. She's running in one of the most Jewish districts in America, and that's her grandfather. And yeah, it's been confirmed that's an actual photo. It was provided by her Uncle Edward. That is Heinrich Meyerhofer, who the family says often picked her up from daycare. Her grandfather was an actual Nazi. And that's a problem when you're in Pinellas County. It is. Most of the people in Pinellas County really don't like if you descend from Nazis. They, it is what it is, folks. It is what it is. So she forgot the Meyerhofer part of her heritage and invented this fantasy, this I'm, and great that she embraced her Hispanic culture. I think that's fantastic. Go ahead. But don't pretend you are something that you are not. Don't sell people that you are Ashkenazi, that you're Messianic when you're Catholic. Don't do it. It's just wrong. It's just fraud. And she knew it was a problem. It's not like it's unknown when you're, and this is Charlie Crist's old district. I mean, there's a lot of political research. They know who the voters are. They know what they want. And her entire fictional narrative was based around running in that district and her job at Turning Point USA. And that's not okay. It's just not okay. Which leads us to another Republican rep. And no, we're not talking about George Santos. We're talking about Andy Ogles from Tennessee. Andy is doing the same damn thing. He's misrepresenting who he is, what he is. He's claiming to have degrees he doesn't have. He has walked around calling himself an economist. The university that he claimed to have graduated from has flat out said they have no reason whatsoever to believe that he has any credible reason to call himself an economist, because one, he has no degrees. He has nothing to support what he's saying. And frankly, it's disgusting, folks. It's just disgusting. I mean, these people are, like I said, they're not bumping their GPA a little bit. They're not, hey, I wasn't a stripper, I was a waitress, or, nothing that you would, I mean, there are bounds, okay? There are bounds. If it's something that you can stretch the interpretation or whatever, it was a typo. I had a 3.2 GPA, but I accidentally typed 3.8. Shit like that you expect in a campaign. You just do. But this whole cloth claiming, like in Andy Ogles' case, you're not going to believe this, claimed he was law enforcement. Well, he was a reserve officer, which technically is law enforcement. But if you know what a reserve officer is, for people that are not familiar with Leos and whatnot, a reserve officer is like what my dad did. He was a reserve officer. You go through the training, they give you a badge, a uniform, and no paycheck, and you help out when they need crowd control or whatnot, or somebody to go on a ride along with an actual officer or things like that. They'll call up a reserve officer and say, hey, we need some manpower, go along. And you have to meet training requirements. You have to be a professional, but it's kind of like being an intern. It basically is what it is. You're definitely not what Andy Ogles claims, which is, to be heading up a international sexploitation investigation. I mean, this guy claimed that not only was he law enforcement, but he was just, top dog law enforcement. It's sickness, folks. It's just sickness to be able to stand out on a campaign and just lie to people like this. I mean, think about what has to be in your head to be able to lie like that. To be able to just whole cloth make shit up about who you are, what you are. I've always told people I worked blue collar jobs most of my life. I was in sales for a while. I have always been a political nut, a history buff. That's who I am. I went to college, wasn't very disciplined, didn't graduate. My education came in things that I really love. I like government. I like history. I like politics. So I educated myself on that. Did not have the discipline to go through a formal education at a university. I did not. Gave it a try. A couple of years, didn't work out. These people, this guy's giving himself rank. He's claiming to be an actual member of law enforcement instead of a reserve officer. He's claiming to run major international investigations when he's never investigated shit, folks. And he was kicked out of the reserves because he didn't show up for training, because he didn't show up for meetings. They removed him. That's just sickness. That is just sickness. And folks, we've got to do something about it. We have got to tell the Republicans that this is not okay, because Kevin McCarthy gutted the ethics committee. There's nothing that can be done in the House because Republicans didn't want oversight. Well, gee, I wonder why. Kevin McCarthy stood before the American people and lied and said that he was referring George Santos to the ethics committee and they were going to be handling. They're not going to handle shit. He gutted the ethics committee. It was part of that fiasco that, vote after vote after vote after vote, he had to give up all of his power. And the Republicans on the floor, that's one of the things they made him give up was the ethics committee. Duh, they're Republicans. Why would they want an ethics committee? And our last story today, this is going to be one that's going to evolve, folks. This one is growing. Meatball Ron Meatball Ron DeSantis might as well be called Manhattan Ron DeSantis. You see Ron DeSantis, and you can see it on his face. The guy's always looks like he's just lost. He's never had an original thought in his life. I mean, somebody had to tell him to put on the stupid white boots during Ian, and walk around and look like he's wearing M&M boots or something. He looked ridiculous because he can't think for himself. He has no self-awareness. He's an idiot. He really is. But he had one thing going for him. One bright spot in Florida. I mean, he screwed up the Ian recovery because they've got that stupid volunteer charity disaster response system. He's just nobody. He's just completely unqualified. The one thing that was handed to him that he could take credit for, because, when things are bad, you got to take credit for that. When things are good, brace yourself, folks. I'm about to say something good about Manhattan Ron DeSantis. Florida schools were some of the best in the country. I mean, it was a bright spot for Florida, which otherwise is very, very challenged in things that the government controls and does. It was a win. And he screwed it up. He screwed it up Why? Because Manhattan Ron can't think for himself. And this is why I'm calling him Manhattan Ron. His little troll that does all of his thinking is a guy by the name of Christopher Rufo. You remember they used to call George Bush and Turd Blossom. They called him Karl Rove. They called him Bush's brain. Well, this is kind of the same thing. You got Christopher Rufo that's doing all the thinking. Christopher Rufo was responsible for the CRT bullshit that you hear out of Republicans. He's the sole source for that. I've got a piece that I've sent over to Midas Touch that they're editing that should drop today or tomorrow on Christopher Rufo and exactly who he is and what he is. But the Cliffs Notes version is, Christopher Rufo, who started all the CRT bullshit, he's responsible for the anti-woke bullshit. He is the guy inside DeSantis's brain, the only person doing any thinking in that pair. Christopher Rufo is a fellow at the Manhattan Institute. I shit you not. And I mean Manhattan. I mean, as in their address is in Manhattan. They are old school. And I mean, going back to the Reagan era, old school, Republican establishment run, I call think tanks trash cans. It's an old school Republican trash can. And I mean, it goes back to Bill Casey and Anthony Fisher. Like I said, I've got a deep dive on that coming out. You'll have to catch that, folks. I don't have time on this show to go into all of it, but that's where this guy comes from. And I'm not even kidding. Mr. Rebel Ron, the guy that's supposed to be anti-establishment, he's supposed to be the new Republicans. All the hillbillies love old Ron because he's not one of them DC. The fuck he's not. Everything that has come out of Ron DeSantis' mouth flowed through Manhattan. That's why from now on, I will be calling Ron Manhattan Ron, because nothing that he is saying came out of Florida. And old Christopher Rufo says his goal is to politicize bureaucracies. And right now he's working on schools. So Ron DeSantis took a bright spot that he could have run on. He could have run on Florida schools. That was going to be a problem for us Democrats. He could have run on that. And he's destroying them. I call it a piss system. They're political indoctrination schools is what he's turned them into. He's gone through, stripped all the library books off the shelves, and he's got these Republican freaky of the most radical freaks going through these books and keeping them away from the children. Now, if you want to read them, you've got to go buy your kids the books, which, let me ask you, how many of you have a library budget? How many of you remember living paycheck to paycheck when you were relying on your paycheck being stretched, clipping coupons? How many of you had go to the bookstore budgets? That's why we have libraries, folks, so that you can read these books. But no, not in Ron DeSantis' Florida. We can't have those top-notch schools. We can't have people thinking. He's turned them into the piss system. Political indoctrination school system. Piss. That's what you've got in Florida now. Instead of top-notch schools, you've got Manhattan Ron piss schools. Way to go, Ron. Way to go. Way to snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory, my friend. The one thing that you could run on, you listen to old Christopher Rufo and screwed it all. Here's to you, buddy. Here's to you, Manhattan Ron. Here's to you, Establishment Ron. Way to go. And the last thing I would like to do before we get to the question segment, folks, just a reminder, and for any of you new folks that are here, at the end of every show, I like to have a question and answer segment. Any questions you have about me, no matter big or small, or anything that we talked about today, or any other subject that's on your mind, please put it in the comments. I'd love to hear it. I would love to hear what you have to say, and we'll talk about it. So get those questions ready to go. Start throwing them in the comments now. I'll scroll back and look for them. The last thing that I would like to talk about is Jimmy Carter. And this is hard for me. I know more about Jimmy Carter than most folks do. Like I said, I'm a political nut. And if you think you know that Jimmy Carter is a good man and was a great president, you have no idea how good and how great he was. And he has lived it. You see me. I give conservative Christians a hard time. You've seen me do it because of the hypocrisy, because they attacked the LGBTQ community when their own Bible was rewritten in 1946, and pedophiles just proliferate in their churches, and I call them out every time a pedophile pastor or priest or deacon or whatever gets busted. I call them out on my social media. But that's not because I'm anti-Christian, folks. I am not. You give me a real Christian and I will show you a good person, a real Christian, a real follower of Jesus Christ. Now, I don't personally ascribe to their Bible. I don't. It makes no scientific sense whatsoever, so I don't accept it. But I do know that somebody that really follows the teachings of Jesus Christ is a pretty good person. Now, that's not what Republicans are. That's not what conservative Christians are. People that follow Republican Jesus, they are not good people. They are hypocrites. They're mean-spirited. They use Christianity to attack and tear people down. That is not what Jimmy Carter is. That man has lived it. He has lived it his whole life. And he is going to be missed. I mean, that man used to work for Habitat for Humanity, and I don't mean he went out and just did fundraisers for him and things like that, because he did do that too. But that man swung a hammer. He built houses. He lived it. He was a Sunday school teacher. That man could have been out making millions in speaking fees. And he was at home being a Sunday school teacher. Because that's who he was. And we're poor because we're losing them. Okay, folks. Let's talk about it. We have hit the question and answer portion of the show, and this show will go on as long as you want it to. As long as you keep feeding me questions, I'll keep answering them. Throw those questions out in the chat, and I will get right to them. And really, no question too small, folks. I mean, this is the fun part of the show, and we need a lift up after that. I apologize for getting choked up. I truly admire and respect Jimmy Carter. Did Mrs. Texas Paul get the link I sent about the third grader in Texas school that found the superintendent's gun in the restroom? I do not know if she got it. She doesn't sit in the room with me, but she can answer that in chat. But I will tell you, thank you for bringing that up. If you don't know about that, this whole arm the teacher shit, the superintendent and principal at a school here, open carry, because, they're going to be a hero. They're going to take down a shooter. Superintendent went in the bathroom, did his business, took his gun down, put it out on the sink, and walked the hell out of the bathroom. I got it. Third grader found it. He says, well, there was no danger beyond the obvious. Well, fuck yeah, the obvious. I mean, you got a third grader playing with your gun, your real gun, that you, like an idiot, left in the bathroom. And that's the problem, folks. You know me, I'm a gun guy. That's a freaking gun cabinet behind me. I love guns. I do. I grew up, I lost my hearing to shooting. But God, folks, stop being idiots. Stop thinking you're going to be a hero. Stop carrying guns around in our society because you got some freaking fantasy in your head. That superintendent needs to be barred from carrying a weapon anywhere. He left it on a sink for a third grader to find. That should be it for him. You people are ruining it for us. You are ruining it for people like me and the millions of other people that own guns, that own them for home protection, that own them for fun. I like to go out back on the property and I like to shoot. I've got a safe setup where I can shoot. I enjoy that. And you're ruining it. You're ruining it with your Second Amendment solutions and your freaking fantasies that you're going to be a tough guy. You don't have the training. You're not going to. If anybody, this whole good guy with a gun thing is a myth. You need to accept, and I'm going to tell you this right here. It is statistically just a fact. If you buy a gun, and I know I have them, I keep them locked up, I keep them under lock and key. If you buy a gun, statistics show, and you cannot argue with the numbers, that it will kill a member of your family or you. It will not save you from a home invasion. That is the rarest of unicorns. The rarest of times that has actually happened is not what's going to happen with the gun that you bring into your home. It is not. Statistics show you're going to get into a fight with your wife and you're going to shoot her. One of your kids is going to find your weapon because you're irresponsible and they are going to shoot themselves. You are going. I had a friend, a man that I consider a dear friend and a wonderful human being, went to clean his 45. Thinking about you, Carl. Went to clean his 45. Cleared it, but didn't. Shot himself in the leg, point blank range with a 45 caliber 1911. And this is a guy that's been around guns his whole life. You are not qualified to endanger the public. Guns are dangerous. I don't give a damn what these ammosexuals say. Guns are dangerous by nature. You are not allowed to endanger everybody else because of your delusional fantasy that you're going to be a hero somewhere. I very much appreciate that comment and question. Thank you very, very much. Lisa, thank you for this comment. I used to skeet shoot with my stepdad. That's what I did predominantly. The shooting that I used to do was skeet shooting and trap shooting. Who was let me finish your comment. I used to skeet shoot with my stepdad, who was a deer and duck hunter too. It was fun, but those guns were always locked up. I was taught on the range, not in my home. P.S. I love venison and hate duck. Me too. Me too. Bleh. Duck is bleh. It is. Unless it is somebody that makes duck à l'orange, which I've only had twice in my life. That was amazing. That was from a chef that knew what the hell they were doing. You may have a wonderful recipe for duck. I've never found one. But venison is wonderful. Venison is wonderful. And on top of what Lisa says here, I was taught by a responsible adult to keep my ammunition separate from my weapon. When we went to the range, the ammunition was kept in the back seat. The guns were in the trunk. You know, I mean, we were taught, don't walk around. You couldn't load your weapon when we shot skeet unless you were in the box. The box is the area where you stand and you call for a pull and they throw the clay and you shoot it. You could not load your weapon anywhere but in the box. And that was at a shooting range with a bunch of gun nuts. We loved our guns, but we weren't stupid. We knew that if everybody walked around with their damn guns loaded, somebody was getting shot. You know, I mean, it was just understood. Thank you for the comment. Another outstanding comment. Are there any other questions? Any topic. It doesn't have to be guns. Any topic. Throw them out there. And forgive the delay, forgive the pauses. I just want to read through the comments because there are some great comments out here. My beautiful wife makes a comment here about the Wild West. God bless her. That's one of the things that when you actually study history, it pisses you off because Hollywood has created this stupid fiction. I had actually somebody say to me, "You're no cowboy. The way you talk about guns, there's no way you're a cowboy." Let me tell you something. Cowboys didn't carry guns. They didn't. They may have had a something in the saddlebag, or they may have had a rifle on their horse. Cowboys are laborers. Okay? Get that through your head. This fictional shit that you see where every cowboy is the law is not true. It is fiction. Towns in the Old West, you had to check your guns when you came into town. You didn't walk around town armed. You know, Wyatt Earp was famous for this. You could have guns. You could own guns. But if you came into town, you checked your guns. Cowboys, I want you to think about that. They're a laborer. What kind of laborer do you know puts a useless several pound, depending on which weapon you have, chunk of steel on their belt? Nobody. Everything you see in Hollywood is a fiction, and it feeds their narratives. They all want to be the cowboy with the gun, and it's not real. It's never been real. All right, folks. Thank you, Ben Loco. What is the legal situation of cannabis in Texas? Good morning. You know, I am not up on Texas cannabis laws. I'm not. I know marijuana is still illegal, and it's the stupidest thing in the world that it is. But I don't know if we've got a medical exemption. I don't believe we do here. If anybody knows, let me know. It's something that I've never really studied up on. But thank you very much for the question. All right, folks, let's throw any questions you got out there. If the questions don't come, we'll wrap it up. I'll take it that you're telling me that we're done. Thank you, Tatted Stoner Dragon. With that screen name, I'll take you as an expert on the subject. Recreational is illegal in Texas, medical not so much. Okay. Mackie, I appreciate this coming. I love living in Puff Puff, Massachusetts. Let me tell you, I did study the subject when Portugal decriminalized all drugs. I followed that, and I keep looking for updates to see how they're doing. And let me tell you, our drug laws are the stupidest in the world. They are just dumb. Portugal decriminalized all drugs. I'm talking all drugs. They said, we are no longer going to throw people in jail over drugs, period. And it is a healthcare problem. We will deal with it with medicine. That's what we will do. And they are better for it. Their budget is no longer riddled with holes because they're spending money locking up their own people over the use of drugs, which is just stupid. And any folks in law enforcement and stuff scream about the legalization of drugs because it is that's how they lock them up, folks. That's how they lock them up. It's the excuse they use to invade your privacy. I smell marijuana. I'm going to have to check you out. You take that away, they lose power, and they don't want to give up that power. And I don't care. Stop locking people up for drugs. Just stop it. It's the same thing with sex workers. Do I think it's great that people go out and be sex workers? No, I do not. But you know what? A sex worker needs to have protection in more ways than one. They need to not be afraid to call the cops. They need to, by criminalizing it, all we're doing is giving the advantage to the criminals. That's all we're doing is making victims. Same thing with drug policy. Same exact thing with drug policy. Stop it. Just stop it. Do I believe in Congress getting lifetime pension and medical coverage? Yes, and I'm going to lose all of y'all on this subject because 99% of the time I do, but I'm not backing down on this, Brendan. I really appreciate the comment. I will tell you, I believe that representatives of Congress are underpaid. Not only do they deserve more pay, but yeah, they earn their benefits. I think because I'm not a government is bad guy. I am a guy that says that if people are really doing the job, there's a lot of information they have to consume. That job is 24 hours a day. And you want the best people doing it. You want people to compete for that job. And the cost, and I know it sounds like a lot of money, $175,000 a year. That's a lot of money, man. If you're living here in Texas, that's a lot of money. Now live in two states. Well, a state and one that should be a state. Try to maintain a residence in Washington, D.C. on top of where you live now. How much would that cost? I mean, think about that. I know, Tricia. It sounds crazy, but I'm going to just throw my case out there, and I know I'm going to lose all of you anyways, but I'm going to tell you $175,000 a year. I want you to think about what would it cost you to rent or buy real estate without favors. That's the problem. It's so expensive in DC. You have these churches that give these politicians places to live, and these politicians that like organizations like called The Family. They do it with Republicans all the time. They give them a free place to live. We need to make that illegal. We need to make that a gift, a campaign contribution that must be tracked. We need to make it illegal is what we need to do. We need to call it what it is, which is a bribe. The problem is, Chuck Schumer, Did you know that Chuck Schumer and Dick Durbin are roommates? Did you know they're roommates? They've got a shitty little apartment in D.C. that they live in because Chuck Schumer's from New York. He gets paid $174,000, a little bit more than that because he's majority leader, but he can't afford to live in New York and D.C. on his salary. I'm telling you, Dick Durbin's apartment is a shitty little apartment. So, yeah, I get it. It sounds like a lot of money. And here in Texas, it is a lot of money. And I could probably pull off living here because I've been financially responsible. I could live here and live in D.C. modestly on $174,000 a year. But is that what you want? Is that who you want competing for that job? Or do you want somebody that is a professional? Do you want somebody that can compete for $500,000 jobs, that can compete for $1 million jobs, that can compete for? I think, yes, we need to pay them more. I do. Call me crazy, but I do. Susan, I get this sentiment. I understand it. I do. I also know it's not reality. These are people that are in the executive class. That's why it's such a disgrace that you got people like George Santos up there, people like Paulina Luna. These are the executive class. They're not going to be okay with this. They're not going to be okay with this. You know, I mean, we have to deal with reality. Mrs. Texas Paul handed me a question here that I missed. It was thoughts on combining the Berkeley report and a question about the Fox Tech scandal. Let's go with the Fox Tech scandal. If you don't know, folks, back, you may have heard something about the Dominion defamation lawsuit. If you don't know who Dominion is, real quick, Cliff Notes version of it. Dominion was a company that made voting machines. Fox News said, and other entities, they've successfully sued several entities and people, said disparaging things about Dominion voting machines that were just not true. When they were saying the false election was stolen narrative, they said a lot of shit that was just not true. A lot of people are suing the Trump organization, and Fox News, Fox political wing, I should say, not Fox News. I've got to train myself not to call them Fox News. They are not freaking news. They have said it themselves. They are a political wing. They are the propaganda wing of the Republican Party. But anyways, the Fox Tech scandal comes out of that lawsuit, the Dominion lawsuit. The Dominion lawyers during discovery demanded the personal text messages of everybody at Fox News in regards to the election and the things that they said to defame the Dominion Corporation. And it's glorious. It is glorious. If you have not kept up on this, it is glorious. From Rupert Murdoch to executives, to Hannity, to Ingraham, to Carlson, all had to turn over their personal text messages. And they are all on record as saying all of this election denial stuff is bullshit. They talk about the Kraken. They talk about Rudy Giuliani, call them nutty as bed bugs. I mean, forgive me, still fighting that cold. Nutty as bed bugs, yada, yada. I mean, they just flat out say that all of this election denial stuff is bullshit. But if they tell people the truth, their business model will fail. So that they just decided they're going to go ahead and lie about it anyways. And it's all in their own words. It's all in their own words. Please, if you don't know anything about it, just Google it. Do the Fox text messages, the Dominion scandal. It is glorious to see them openly say that they know everything they're telling the rubes the Republicans, the Republican voters, the rubes, their marks. It's complete bullshit. And it is glorious. All right, let me see if I missed a good question here. Don, on me, I understand this comment, and yes, they are getting rich, and yes, they're getting rich off insider information. That needs to be stopped. That needs to be stopped. And it is not. That is, I hate both sidism. I hate both sidism because Democrats fight for people. They do the right things for people. But this is one thing where I'm going to tell you, Democrats are just as dirty as Republicans. They get inside information. They know what's going on. They get briefed on what's going on, and they buy accordingly. And they make millions of dollars off stocks. And we need to stop that. I mean, yeah, I want them paid more, but I want this shit to stop. This is not right. This is crooked. This is them governing to represent these interests. Because, man, I tell you what, if I owned a couple $1 million in the company's stock, I'd be telling you how fantastic they are, and they do the same thing. So, yeah, I get your point. Totally, 100% agree. This is bullshit. I'm on your side here, but I will tell you that needs to be stopped, and we need to pay these people more and make demands that they act professionally, much more professionally as representatives of us. So, yeah, I'm not just talking about willy-nilly, just give them some more money. That's not what I'm saying. Please don't misunderstand me. Absolutely agree with this also. Scotty, you may not have heard my whole comment on this. I am saying this shit needs to end. I am not just talking about handing them more money. That's not what I'm saying when I say I think they need to be paid more. I'm saying we need a professional class in those jobs, and given what it costs to live in two places, given the expenses, I mean, these people have to travel, man. They do. They've got to travel. They deal with international affairs, and right now what we've got is special interests sending them to Israel, because apparently it's much easier to hear when you're seeing the most beautiful sights in the Middle East than it is to hear in an office building in DC. It's bullshit, and that stuff needs to be stopped. So please don't misunderstand. What about ranked voting? Love it. I love ranked voting. I do. And it's stupid of me to just wholeheartedly endorse it like I do, because it doesn't help us in every case. And I am a partisan Democrat. I say it. I am honest about it. I wear the badge. I am a partisan Democrat, and it doesn't always help us. But I loved ranked voting. Thank you, Midas Robin. Jimmy Carter did put solar panels on the White House, and that jackass Ronald Reagan tore them off as soon as he became office. And this goes to something that is beyond just the solar panels on the White House, and it goes back to the gun issue. It goes back to everything. Greg Abbott has done shit about the mass shootings we've had here. I put a pretty impassioned video out on social media after the shooting in El Paso, the second shooting that we've had in El Paso in recent, in the last couple of years. It's leadership, folks. You lead by example. Greg Abbott can't so much as go out and say, this isn't okay. It is never okay to solve a problem with your guns. It is not. Because that brushes too far up against their Second Amendment solutions bullshit that they all preach, and he won't do it. Lead. We need people that will lead. Part of being in government, and I'll tell you, I'll do it. I will. I'll tell you. I will disagree with you. If I think something is good for us, but it is counter to what's popular, I'll make the argument. I will make the argument. That's being a leader. That's what leaders have to do. Leading isn't always just doing what everybody wants. I mean, I know that's the principle behind democracy is to get elected. So therefore you're pleasing your constituents, but you also please them by sometimes telling them what they need to hear, not just what they want to hear. All right, folks. Great question so far. You guys are really killing it. Great comments, great questions. That's why I love you folks. I say that, and I don't throw that out flippantly. I don't. I mean it. I love spending time with you folks. You ask the best question, even when I don't agree. I mean, there've been a couple of comments out there I didn't agree with, but they're lucid, well thought out, impassioned points of view, and I really, really, I love y'all for that. I do. Cheryl Clark. Paul, tell us what you think about Missouri new gun law for 14-year-olds. It is fucking insane. It is insane. Guns are dangerous. They're not meant for children. Children should be supervised constantly. It's just, again, it's that failure of leadership. It's the wrong message. Everything is wrong about it. Reducing the age of which people can, and again, I'll share a personal story. There's a 16-year-old kid walking. I live out in the sticks, man. It's people shoot out here. I get that. But this 16-year-old kid was, a little old beat up road that goes in front of my place out in the sticks, was walking down squirrel hunting on the road, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. Do you like squirrel dumplings? I'll tell you, squirrel dumplings are great, folks. I mean, I hate to admit that I eat rodent, but squirrel dumplings are great. And I don't care if you squirrel hunt. And the property on the other side of the road, nobody lives on. There's some old lady that lives an hour from here that owns that property. She owns a good swatch of property that's undeveloped. It's beautiful trees and whatnot. Shoot over there all you want. I didn't care. I cared when the kid turned around and shot at a squirrel at a tree, and the tree was between my house and him. He shot directly at my house. That was a problem. It was a 16-year-old kid, unsupervised. All he had was a little .22 rifle. Does not matter. He was unsupervised, so he did something really stupid. And it's just not right. Kids, this whole culture of, well, I grew up with guns and this and that. I did too, but I guarantee you my dad was on my ass. I mean, folks, you just got to, this is the wrong message. Thank you, Midas Robin, for another great comment. I want to throw this out here too. And it has to do with what old Manhattan Ron is doing in Florida. If a little black girl, and you've all seen the pictures, can put up with screaming racist crowds during desegregation and live through that, your little white kid can live through reading about it. I have to tell you, these Republicans are the weakest snowflakes in the world, and they are raising a whole nother batch of them, because this whole premise that, we don't want anybody to tell them what really happened because, people will feel bad. Bullshit. Teach people. This whole curriculum and history that you get right now stems directly from a successful effort put out by the Daughters of the Confederacy to rewrite our history. And the Daughters of the Confederacy, I'm not talking like back during the Civil War. This group existed exist today. They don't have the power they once did, but they exist today. They rewrote our history. They infiltrated the schools and rewrote our history. If little Republican white kids of Republicans, I mean to say, cannot handle reading about what a poor white kid or a black kid or any minority or a gay kid or whatever had to endure, actually live through, your kid is so weak and such a snowflake that they can't even read about it or hear a lecture about it. My God, how weak are you? And what are you saddling us with in the future? These kids will not be able to function in the real world because they won't know what the real world is. I can't believe victims' parents aren't losing their minds about the AR-15 lapel pins being worn on our floor. If I had to identify my baby by their shoes, I'd be stalking members. Totally understand your sentiment, and they are losing their minds, and they are raging about it. I give everyone this advice. Follow these people on social media. They are driven, and they are sources of great information. And yes, if you don't know what we're talking about, Republicans have taken to removing their American flag lapel pins that the members of Congress wear, and they are replacing it with a gold AR-15, a pin that's about this big. They're wearing that because their fealty is to a fucking chunk of metal, not our country. And they think it owns us. They're like, ooh, that sure makes the liberals mad. No, it doesn't. Just makes you look like a piece of shit. And you know, Michael, this is what I'm talking about. They're ruining it for everybody because, yeah, a lot of people don't believe this when we old timers talk about this stuff. They don't believe this stuff like this really happened. The boys that ran traps when I was a kid had to TP their rifles in the principal's office before school started. Nobody ever shot anyone. Something changed. Yeah, it did. It really did. And it's called Republicans. They wanted to sell, the NRA came along and their goal was to sell AR-15s because AR-15s, you can sell people over and over and over again, gadgets and stuff to put on the Picatinny rails, optics and different stocks and everything else. It's like a fucking Build-A-Bear. So yeah, they changed the whole culture around guns. Mine was the first generation that went to my high school that you couldn't drive to school with a gun and a gun rack on the back of your pickup. And they were left in pickups unlocked because nobody stole them. It was an entirely different culture that has been ruined, completely ruined by Republicans and modern gun culture. But yes, things like that really happen. You had, it's a big country, folks. That's where I get into trouble with gun laws is that, in the city, laws that make sense in the cities, like I mentioned, Wyatt Earp, he said no guns in the cities, you had to check your guns and that and the other. That's one thing, that may be what you have to do in some cities, but it doesn't apply. We're a huge country. We're a huge country with vastly different cultures. So these blanket laws don't really fit. You are going to find somebody to outrage. But having said that, these right-wingers, these frickin' ammosexuals have ruined guns to the point where I know I'm going to have to accept some regulations I don't want. That's what's going to happen in the long run. In the long run, is what's going to happen because we will not keep accepting because these mass shootings will continue to get worse and worse and worse and worse. They're not going to get better on their own, folks. They're not. Let's get away from the guns. Somebody give me a good question. I don't want to beat that dog forever unless y'all just want to talk about it, and then we'll talk about it. Oh, this is why I love my wife. She's just so on the ball about everything. If you haven't already subscribed or smashed the like button, please do. Paul needs your help to get his voice out louder. That is absolutely true. And I want to tell you folks, confession on my part, and you may be doing the same thing I did, and that's why I tell you this story. I spent forever, years watching YouTube. I wouldn't come near that subscribe button. I didn't know what it did, but I knew that every time I hit a button like that, it was a pain in the ass, and I got text messages and shit like that. That is not what this subscribe button does. And I kicked myself in the ass for not using it earlier, because there's some tech creators, woodworking. There's all kinds of things that I follow on YouTube because it is a fantastic resource. Hit the subscribe button, folks. All it does is it gives you the ability to find me when there's a new video out. And it tells the algorithm that you want to see my stuff. That's all it does. So please, hit the subscribe button and hit that like button. It really helps me get this video out. And if you can, make sure you leave a comment down in the comments. I am YouTube user. That's a great name. Do the Democrats have I'm sorry. Do the Democrats have a strategy to get past gerrymandering that is done extensively in red states? I will tell you what I'm doing, and I want to hear how you feel about it. I'm not a high road guy. I'm not. I believe you fight the fight that you have in front of you. Republicans gerrymander. They have gerrymandered my state. They've gerrymandered. They defy the courts. They defy the courts to tell them their maps are too biased. Whiny to whiny did that up in Ohio. They defy the damn courts. They gerrymander so much. Florida is gerrymandered. I say we do the same thing. We gerrymander New York. We gerrymander California. We gerrymander all of these massively large blue states, break those districts up by population, gerrymander the shit out of those states until Republicans are screaming and begging us to stop. Because if we gerrymander like they gerrymander, we have a 60 vote. We have the votes in the House and a 60 vote majority, well over a 60 vote majority in the Senate. Because of the momentum that comes from gerrymandering. I realize gerrymandering doesn't affect statewide races, but it does, because when you have momentum in your districts, that carries over in future elections. Folks, gerrymander. Republicans will not stop. They are completely, they've got freaks in the court that either support it or they just ignore what they're told to do by the courts. I say, we do the same thing. No high road for us. Let's gerrymander till they beg us to stop. Thank you for that comment. That was a great comment. Not really. There hasn't been a lot of news surrounding old Scabby Steve. He's facing some legal jeopardy, and he has not been poking his head out much. He does the far right radical crazy circuit, but he's just really saying the same things he's always said. He has been mostly like the nonsense we had down in Brazil. That came out of his organization. You had Jason Miller down there, the thumb down there in Brazil, stirring up problems. That all came out of, when they had their January 6th and immediately arrested everybody, perp walked everybody out in handcuffs. That was because of Steve Bannon. I'm sorry, Martha. You got to be a little bit more. I don't know what do we do about what? That would be a great start. That would be a great start. Pass the Voting Rights Act. That would be a great start. But I say in lieu of that, we take it down to the states, and every state we control, we gerrymander the shit out of. Because, okay, this is a good comment. Good question. Why can't Republicans draw a line from Trump overturning environmental safety regulations, Obama passed the Ohio train tragedy, like it's so obvious, so obvious? Okay. Thank you for the question. They don't want to. They don't want to. Republicans want to be told lies. They do. They want to hear lies. They want to hear CRT is in every aspect of their lives when it's just a course taught to a small minority of students. And I think it was 5 universities have it as an elective. It's an advanced elective. 99.999% of the students never take the course, but they want to believe it's in every aspect of their lives so that they've got a villain, they've got a bad guy to fight, they've got, and Republicans love fake fights. They don't, they're talking about pulling out of debates. They don't want to argue with us. They don't want to argue with old Texas Paul, because I will go get receipts and I'll just smack them in the face with it. That does them no good. So they invent fake fights like, Ron, old Meatball Ron, old Manhattan Ron and his gas stoves. There was no fight there. There was no federal government on the other end fighting with Republicans. They didn't save Republicans from anybody, but the Republicans want to be they want to be victims. So that's what they wanted to hear. They wanted to hear that we Democrats were going to take their stoves because that makes them a victim and makes us a bad guy and supports all their little feels. So they invented a fake fight, and their politicians were more than happy to do it, because in a fake fight, you can't lose because there's nobody really on the other side fighting you. There was no take the gas stoves federal agency over there fighting with Republicans, fighting back. So, yeah, Ron DeSantis kept saying, "Oh, me tough guy, me protect stoves." It's idiocy. It's pure idiocy. And that's what they want to hear. So when you tell them the truth, which is that when the FAST Act was passed back in 2015, that it had a bunch of regulations for trains, oil cars, different types of chemicals. You had to put pneumatic braking systems on those rail cars. Trump repealed that, and it would have been helpful to stop derailments. The problem is Republicans are more than willing to train shippers these companies don't want these regulations. They don't want air brakes on their trains. It's expensive. It means they have to buy a new type of car, and they have to retrofit their old cars, and it costs money, and they don't want to do it. So they lobby Republicans who are more than willing to compromise safety so that we can keep a braking system on our freight trains that goes back literally to the Civil War era, is when these were designed. Instead of modern ECP braking systems, which are the equivalent of what you see on big trucks. When a big truck has an emergency or it's in an accident, it loses air pressure. The air pressure goes away. The air pressure keeps the brakes off of the drums. It keeps them pulled away from the drums. When you lose air pressure, they're spring-loaded, so they slap against the drums and go into full force. That's what happens on a big truck. Okay? We want to do that to trains, and not just like the FAST Act did on just a few specific chemicals. We want to do it on all trains, because it helps. It doesn't matter if the cars in the back of the train are carrying gravel. If you have a derailment with cars in the front that are carrying chemicals that are regulated, well, the cars in the back are still going to push. You need all the cars to have the ECP braking systems, so that if something happens, a derailment starts, those train cars in the back that may not be carrying hazardous chemicals. They're carrying frickin' gravel. They slam on their brakes. They stop that train. That's what you want. I really appreciate that comment, Amanda. FEMA cannot just come into your state and do shit, okay? Unless your state leadership is decapitated in an emergency, there must be a request from states. We kind of believe in that separation of powers. We don't want just a federal government. So yeah, there are procedures in place. And you know, the derailment was on February 3rd. It took to February 16th before the state of Ohio actually made the requests that were necessary to free up FEMA to do everything it needed to do. FEMA was on the ground saying, look, we got resources. Let us jump in, man. Put me in, coach. Put me in. What did Whiny do? He said, well, I got a call, wanted to look like a tough guy. And it was the stupidest thing he could have ever done, because now we have him on tape saying it. And I'm glad. I love when they're stupid. But he sits there on video and says, Joe Biden called me and said he's willing to help, but I ain't called him back. Like, we got this. I'm the man. I'm handling this. Folks, you need the requests. There's a way that it operates. There are rules. There are triggers, and they finally did what they were supposed to do, which freed up the federal government to do what it does. Bingo. Great comment there, Michael. Yes, you are, Mr. Delaney, a brainwashed fuck. Go fuck yourself. Everybody, tell Delaney he can go fuck himself. So right about that, Lisa. Whiny. He just looks... He does. He looks like George Burns. If you don't know who George Burns is, you're not old. I'm telling you, that cussing pond is cathartic. It is really cathartic. That's a fact right there. Hey, Delaney, you paying attention, you dumb fucker? It was 10 days before J.D. Vance said a damn thing, and they had to call him. The Republican Party had to call him and say, this is your job. Hello, this is your job. There's a train derailment in your state. It's a major ecological disaster. You need to be working. I cannot believe people had to tell him that was his job. He's got staff for that. We give them all a staff. Even if he was brain dead somewhere, he's got staff that can tap him on the shoulder and say, a train derailed in your state. You might want to do something about it. Do you think Florida voters will begin the recall for DeSantis with all his authoritarian leanings? No, I do not. They're not going to do a recall on DeSantis. We are going to have to engage in a massive get out the vote effort in Florida. So, folks, I'm asking you now, don't wait till right before the election. Now Get you a little savings account. Put $5 in it every once in a while. Just every once in a while when you can come. I know that money laying around isn't a thing in America. Everybody needs their money. But if you can, set aside a few bucks for this next election and support those get out the vote efforts. Support those people that are engaged in the ground game. Support people like me who get the message out. Just do it. Find your favorite people and help them out. Because I guarantee you, like we're talking about the Manhattan Institute, that's got Johnny Got Rocks, the billionaires behind it, funding the fuck out of that place to get their messages, their propaganda out. We don't have that. You don't have that. You don't. The only people that can pay for it is us. So please, pretty please, don't wait till election time. Start setting aside a little money now. I'll be glad to talk to him about it. Talking about DeSantis, paint him as a human trafficker. You don't have to paint him. He is. He is a human trafficker. He intentionally misleads people, puts them on buses that aren't even in his own state. He actually is crossing state lines to do this. It's something, man. It doesn't even affect Florida. And the legislature has set aside, have now codified this, and there's actually a government apparatus in the state of Florida to go to other states to mislead people. They lie to them. They don't tell them the truth, to put them on buses and ship them to other states, which I don't care. Just send them straight to Democratic states. We'll handle it. We know you're too incompetent to be, Republicans are too incompetent to govern in border states. They can't do it. So just let us do it. That's doing God's work right there, Denise. God bless you. On election day, give people rides to the polls. Make sure your people that are going to go vote, you can help them get there if they need the help. Texas Paul, where's Lady G, Lindsey Graham hiding? Haven't seen or heard from him in a while. He is in deep political. His lawyers got a hold of him. That is what happened. His lawyers got a hold of him. And the first thing your lawyers do, if you've got a decent lawyer, is to tell you to shut your mouth. And that is exactly what he's doing, because he is in deep legal jeopardy over the case down in Florida. He screwed up. Could you imagine going to jail for Donald Trump? And we all know that Lindsey Graham's not going to end up in jail. We have our legal system shows preferences for people like Lindsey Graham. He's white and he's rich. He's not going to jail. He's going to get a slap on the wrist, and we all know it. But he's still in jeopardy, so he's keeping his mouth shut. Meadows is not cooperating. There's a lot of rumors about that. There's a lot of speculation about that. My personal assumption is that he is not, because they're having to subpoena him for information. Typically, if somebody's cooperating with you, you write up a subpoena, but it's not announced. It's not something that's big news. It's just a shuffling of paperwork. And the fact that they're having to aggressively go after him tells me, no, he's not cooperating. And he's not cooperating because he's one of the targets. He's one of the main targets. It's not just Trump that's going to end up in trouble over this. Mark Meadows was a huge part of January 6th, huge part of the election denial, all of it. Folks, we've got 5 minutes left. Let's get some good questions out there and wrap this up. Trump's lawyers have subpoenaed. Oh yeah, the subpoenas are flying everywhere. Have you folks heard that the Proud Boys have subpoenaed Donald Trump? Yeah, Donald Trump, who's trying to claim he didn't know nothing, he wasn't involved in anything. The Proud Boys are subpoenaing him and say he told us to. He told us to. They're going to put Donald Trump under oath. He's just going to plead the fifth again. Is all he's going to do. But. I just absolutely love to see them eating their own. All right, folks. We're down to 4 minutes. You got 4 minutes to get your questions out there. I love this question and answer section. This is, for me, one of the funnest parts of the shows. I love to hear what you guys are thinking and what's on your mind. You know, Ben, I hear this a lot. A lot of folks that, will Trump flee and this, and I've joked about that before myself. But in all seriousness, no, I don't think he's going to run for it. I don't. He has his entire life engaged in delaying tactics on every criminal, every civil proceeding he's ever been in. That's the way he operates, and the same will happen. You know how long these cases can take, and you know how old he is. He will likely be dead before his prosecution is over from old age. He will delay this prosecution out for years. What he's hoping for is a crooked Republican to take power and end it all. That is his goal. His goal isn't going to be to run. His goal is going to be just to delay, and hope he can get a Republican in the White House that will end all this. That's why you folks need to be voting. I mean, if you want justice to prevail, you've got to keep Democrats in the White House. J Dice, sorry, one more try. I think we need left channels to do weekly vids on the lie that is the term pro-life and why women are in danger. Do you? Yeah, I think it'd be great if we had somebody that would go out there and talk about this. I talk about it quite often. I will tell you, I do not engage in debates with right-wingers about abortion because the debate is not where the line is drawn on abortion or any kind of birth control or anything to do with women's body. The debate is who draws the damn line. And it is women's bodies. It is women's health. It is their decision, not yours. Not yours. Women draw the line, and that's it. It's kind of like, everybody keeps talking about, well, maybe some peace will break out in Ukraine, this, that, and the other. No, the Ukrainians have said, we're going to fight it out. Russia will leave. That is the end. Russia leaves. There is no negotiation. We need to be the same way on the abortion issue. Never engage in a debate about, well, let's call it 16 weeks or let's call it, I don't care. Fuck you. I don't care where you put it. I don't care if you put it one day before birth. I don't care. Not because those abortions are happening. It's because you don't get to make the line. Old white guy in a legislature somewhere, you don't get to make the line. Your church doesn't get to draw the line. It's a woman's body. It's her decision. She draws the line when it happens. Folks, I've been staying away from the Berkeley report, I'll be honest with you, because more is coming out about that. And that is going to be the subject of some videos this week. So I'll be honest with you, I didn't dive into it because I'm telling you, there is more there. There's more that's going to come out. And when I think that a sufficient amount of it has come out, I am going to do either a video with Midas Media, or I'm going to put it out next week's show here. But we're going to talk about the Berkeley report. We are. Oh, and by the way, I've got my website up and running, realtexaspaul.com. Easy to find, realtexaspaul.com. Take you right to it. It's got links to my YouTube page if you want to see my videos. It's got links to this show if you want an easy way to find the show when we're on. It's got information. It's got links to merch. If you want a coffee mug, you got a link right there. Take you right to it. Anyways, folks, we are over by a minute. I appreciate you. I mean it when I say it. I love talking to you folks. You are incredibly heartening people. You remind me that we are not a country going down the shitter, that we've got a lot of good people here in this country, and I love you folks for it. And like I said, I don't say that lightly. I am telling you, this is what feeds me. I appreciate you folks. Oh, she was so close. She was so close. There's an L in there. RealTexasPaul.com. I love you folks. Y'all have a great day. This is old Texas Paul out. Hope your coffee's as good as mine.